Generalized conditioned reinforcers, A, are more affected by satiation than conditioned reinforcers, but less affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers. B, are less affected by satiation than conditioned reinforcers, but more affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers. C, are less affected by satiation than conditioned reinforcers and less affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers. Or D, are more affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers and more affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers. So, generalized conditioned reinforcers, what it's asking me is, are they more affected by satiation or less affected by satiation than unconditioned or conditioned reinforcers? C is the correct answer, which is, are less affected by satiation than conditioned reinforcers and less affected by satiation than unconditioned reinforcers. So to know this, we have to know a couple of things. We have to know stuff we've already learned. Like in chapter 2, we learned about satiation, which means kind of having too much of something and then not wanting it anymore. So the example of this would be like pie. Like, I love pie. I would probably do a lot of behaviors, and a lot of behaviors would probably be reinforced by pie for me. But if I've just had like a giant meal, like Thanksgiving style, I've had 3 plates and already 2 pieces of pie, I might be so satiated, so full on food as a reinforcer that pie, which would normally function as a reinforcer for getting up and getting myself pie, will no longer function as a reinforcer. And so unconditioned reinforcers and conditioned reinforcers are going to be affected by satiation because, yeah, there's just like a threshold that eventually, if we have that much, we don't want anymore. The thing about generalized conditioned reinforcers is they're less affected by satiation than both of these. So I always give the example of money, right? Like if you're like, you can do 5 push-ups and get $10,000. Honestly, there's no limit to the amount of push-ups that I'm going to do. Like, there's no point where I'm gonna be like, "I don't want $10,000 anymore." Or if it is, it's a really big point, and I haven't gotten there in my life. I'll let you know if I do. But for now, $10,000 would be really hard to satiate on. So money, we would consider as a generalized conditioned reinforcement. There also is this thing about like, kind of smiling or praise, dependent on the person. But for most people, there's not like a certain amount of like smiling that you're like, I've had too much smiling. I don't want people to smile at me anymore, which is why it functions as a generalized conditioned reinforcer. It's been paired with so many conditioned and unconditioned reinforcers in the past that it's actually not likely to satiate. So, generalized conditioned reinforcers, and remember, a generalized conditioned reinforcer is part of the umbrella of conditioned reinforcers. So, there are really only 2 types of reinforcers. Oh, there's really only 2 types of reinforcers and punishers, which is conditioned and unconditioned. And then within conditioned, generalized conditioned reinforcers are just like a sliver of part of that larger umbrella. So unconditioned, conditioned, and then underneath conditioned, there's some small part of that become generalized conditioned reinforcers. So there's really not 3 types, which can be helpful to remember.